Hello, my dear chess friends, and welcome to this video, which is pattern recognition number 6. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I think it's finally time for a new one, and this one is going to be all about the wrong colored rook pawn, or the wrong rook pawn. Now, what is that? That is simply a very important pattern that you must know, and one that can save you many games. Now, as usual, before we go on to more complicated examples, we're going to look at what this pattern is all about. And the wrong rook pawn, of course, implies that it's a rook pawn. And the 8th pawn qualifies as just that, a rook pawn. And you'll notice that in this case, our 8th pawn, the queening square is black. Now, unfortunately for us, the bishop on f5 is a light squared bishop. It can only operate on the light squares, so it cannot control the queening square. And this turns out to be a very important detail. And the key defense for black here is to bring his king to the corner here. If you can do that, the game is a draw. So let's have a look. Black is gonna walk his king to the corner. He's well aware of what he should be doing. White tries to get his pawn rolling, but the king walks onto the corner. And we'll notice that, well, let's try to approach with the king. That seems logical. But we can't make any progress. If we push our king here, guess what? Black can't move, it's stalemate. We push the pawn, the same thing. The king is covering this, so we have a stalemate here in the corner of the board. So if the king can reach the corner, it turns out we don't have any way to kick him out of the corner because of the bishop's inability to operate on the opposite complex of its color. So a white squared bishop naturally can't do anything on the black squares. So we have no way of getting the king away from the h8 square. Now, if you go back to the starting position, we're now actually going to see what happens if it's white to move. So, if it's white to move in this particular position, we already know that if the king reaches the corner, it's going to be a draw. So white's only chance to win with the wrong colored rook pawn is to either queen the pawn before the king can reach the corner, or to deny the king entry to the corner. So one basic idea is, well, let's assume very bad play from black. And we can bring our king here to g7. Now, obviously with the king here, we have no problems with queening the pawn. It's going to reach the queen square unhindered because the black king can't do anything. Okay, let's go back and actually assume that black knows what it's doing. And after h6, he realizes he must go to the corner, so he plays king f8. But we also know what we're doing. And here we can also play a move like bishop e6 or bishop h7. In this case, bishop h7 is quite useful. And actually, king f7 is a better move here. Blocks bishop e6, forces us to play bishop h7. And here we'd like to pick up the pawn with king h6. King g5 takes h6. But white is just in time. He plays king f4. And now black can't reach this square. So this is very important. If the white king had been further away, if he's not on any of these squares that can go to f4, let's say this, let's actually make them green because they're good squares. So like this. If we're on any of these squares, we can move our king to either f4 or g4, and that simply means that we block the black king from coming to g5. So if we're outside of these green squares, including this one, we're not going to be able to stop black from coming with his king to g5. From g5 we can pick up our pawn. So very important here, but we do have king f4, fortunately for us. And now the black king is well cut off, so we can well easily swing him, and we're going to end up with what we had against the unskilled play before. We're going to get our king to g7, a key square for white, and we're going to be able to queen the pawn. So now we're going to look at some further examples of this theme. And we're going to start with another position that's a possible exception. Note that we're playing with an h pawn here and a light squared bishop. In case we actually had one pawn over here, let's say on the a file, then we would actually need a black squared bishop for that to be a draw, because it can't reach the light square. But okay, we'll see some examples with other pawns later. But in this position, again, black's move. What's the key drawing method? The key drawing idea, simply to get the king to the corner, right? Yeah. So king h7 is going to do just that. We're going to reach the corner, the key here, and it's going to be a draw. So again, if we try to make progress, I mean this, we just go to the corner. That's the safest. We're in a stalemate position, so the bishop must move again, and we just go back and forth. Nothing to be done. Okay, but if it's white to move, then we already know what black wants to do. He wants to reach the corner, so we have to prevent that. And we actually, in this position, we have two ways of doing that. We can't allow the king to reach the very important h7 square, so we need to stop him from doing that, and we have two ways to do that. One is to play bishop g6. There's no more king h7, the king must retreat, and now the well-known king g7, sheltering the pawn. We're all ready for marching the pawn. The other idea is to play king g8, and again, a zugzwang, the king must walk away, and same thing. Note that bishop g8 is of course a blunder, because we lose the pawn. Not good. So okay. So it should be quite clear now that if the king reaches the corner, we have a draw. In this next example that we got here, we don't actually yet have a situation of a wrong rook pawn. We actually have a g pawn here for white, and a whole bishop for black. But let's actually make a move for black here. It's black to move, and he has a very evil move here that will save the game. Can you find this move for black? Black plays the excellent move, bishop h3. Why does he do that? Well, let's have a look. If we move the pawn, it's actually pinned. We win this bishop, and we're going to easily draw the game. If we don't take the bishop, let's say king anywhere actually. Now we take this pawn. And what do we have? We have the wrong rook pawn. And most importantly, our king is already in the corner, so it's going to be a dead draw. So what remains is taking the bishop, the most logical move. But this turns out to be a draw as well. And it actually doesn't matter how many h-pawns we have. It's still the wrong rook pawn. And the extra pawn cannot help us to promote here. Let's have a look. We of course go to the corner like we've been taught. And what to do? If we push, we go to the corner. And the extra pawn can't do anything. What are you going to do with it? Absolutely nothing. Once we check, it's stalemate time. So okay, we don't have a stalemate, so let's try to use the pawn, but now it's stalemate unless we give up the pawn, and well, nothing happens. We're gonna go back to the situation we had in the first diagram. Kind of our first example of using the knowledge of the wrong rook pawn to gain a draw. Let's have a look at more examples where the knowledge of the wrong rook pawn will simply save the game. Now you may have heard about the drawing tendencies of opposite colored bishop endgames. And one of the reasons for that can be the wrong rook pawn. And here we have an example where it's white to move. And if we were watching some amateurs playing here, we could actually see white winning with a sequence like this. Let's say he wants to get the bishop to another diagonal. Now he wants to attack the pawn, which is actually a decent idea if he plays bishop h6. But if he goes here, then all of a sudden he's lost. So this is something that you might see at the amateur level. Here, and after takes, we're gonna queen. Well, actually, after takes, it's already made. But if the bishop goes elsewhere, not on this diagonal, we would have queen next move. So that was very clumsy play by black. But after g5, using our knowledge, it's clear that we can already immediately draw the game with bishop takes g5. Our king is already in the corner, can't be driven out. Gonna go back and forth. You already know this, and this is going to be a draw. In the example that we got right here on the board, it's black to move, and once again we're going to have black save the game because of his knowledge of the wrong rook pawn. Note that we're always going to play with white on the bottom. You can see, of course, the coordinates A, B, C, D up to H and 1 up to 8. So just to clarify, we're always going to have the board looking the same way. Now, here black to move, with our knowledge, we can make a draw here. We know that we want to eliminate white's g pawn. If we can remain with only an h pawn, then we actually have very good chances of winning the game. So black starts with h5, and as always, we need our king in the corner. So black starts with h5. White tries to wait with bishop c8. Let's have a look at a few options. Of course, g4 is a bad move because we already have eliminated all the pawns. We have to take, and of course this is a draw. h4, black plays g4, right? No, he doesn't. Because then we have this pawn, and we can actually win with some kind of Zugzwang. So we take on h4, of course, leaving white with the wrong rook pawn. Now we simply walk to the beloved corner here, and we just allow white to pick up our pawns, and we know that our king can't be driven out of the corner. and it's going to be a draw. So bishop c8 looks like a sensible waiting move here after h5. Bishop c8. Bishop to 8, e8 is similar. Doesn't really matter. In that case, we can just play h4. Or can we? We should play this move, g4 check. And if king here, we play h4. Brilliant stuff. Now, if white takes here, we simply take back. And since we're threatening to take, white has to take, but this leaves him with the wrong rook pawn, and we are coming to the corner. We're just in time. King here, pawn, king, etc. So it's very similar after bishop to c8. Yeah, actually bishop e8 is the best move. Let the bishop c8. How can we make a draw? Probably the same as last time. This takes, takes. And very importantly, after bishop takes g4, attempting to get a winning pawn endgame after this. And well, that's a different lesson to learn the opposition. White's going to win here. Again, very important move, and this probably you can't play without the proper knowledge. You just have to play h4 here. You're threatening to exchange the last pawn, so white takes, but wrong colored rook pawn. So now let's look at some famous examples. And I actually can't think of a more famous example of the wrong rook colored theme than a game by Bobby Fischer. This is in the candidates tournament. He's playing against Taimanov. He beat Taimanov 6-0. He beats Larsen 6-0. And then he won the World Championship in a famous match here in Iceland against Spassky. But history could have been written differently if Taimanov had defended correctly in a wrong rook pawn ending. But well, maybe fortunately he didn't. 6-0 sounds a lot better than 5.5 half. So here is a position from that game. And let's first see what happened. Taimanov went king e4. Bobby went bishop c8. King f4. And the main problem with this approach here is that, well, the king is not getting closer to the corner. So what Taimanov tried to do was to keep control of the knight and hope that the knight could actually stop the pawn. He, however, couldn't have been more wrong. And here the pawn is running. Bishop f5, cutting off the knight. And, well, if Taimanov was hoping that he could stop the pawn here and keep control of the knight, again, couldn't have been more wrong. We can't keep control of the knight and stop the pawn. So the game is lost here, and actually it was only a few more moves. h7, knight h4, king f6. This pawn will queen next move, so Fischer won. But history might have been different if Taimanov had gone knight d3. And what's the idea here? Well, the idea is simply to give up the knight because we don't need it. All we need to do is do what? Get to the goddamn corner. Get to the corner. That's a draw. So h4, knight f4. We also know that, of course, a lone bishop can't win the game, so that's a draw. So we can't do that. So we have to kick the knight. But we already know that we don't have to worry about the knight being kicked, because all we have to do is reach the corner, and here we are in time. once we reach the g7 square, it's all good, and we're going to be able to do that by playing king f7. If we had played king f8, well, that's also fine. So we reach the h8 square safely here. Say h5. So maybe king h6 is more of a tricky move, but we reach the corner nonetheless, and the game is drawn. Here we have another example. This is from one of the matches between Karpov and Kasparov. And here Kasparov managed to use the wrong rook pawn knowledge to save, well, a difficult ending. White has the more active king here, and some threats to penetrate if the black king moves. So more passive position for black. And he actually played here bishop b3, which looks risky because the white bishop can come over and target these weak pawns that are on light squares. So more pawns on light squares, which usually is bad in the bishop endgame. But here Kasparov played king e7, and it turns out that after he gets this 8 pawn, bishop takes f5, king f6. This will actually be an easy draw for black because he will sacrifice his bishop for the f pawn, and we will remain with a wrong rook pawn. So for example, something like this, we can simply play king here. And okay, I'll just leave it to you to check this position as an exercise, but you'll find that this is a draw. For an example, f5, I already played bishop d7. I will take here next, and you can't play f6. My king is already well placed to capture on f6, so I can play bishop takes f5 next move. So already this is a draw. Playing something like h5, I will simply play bishop d7. And now you also have to worry about this pawn simply being captured with, say, king h6 and takes h5. White first has to win this pawn, and in doing that, he's going to have too many pieces engaged. And you just have to trust me here that black will sacrifice his bishop for the f pawn, and we will have a draw. Now we're going to move on to some, well, slightly more complex examples, and we're as well going to see some examples from recent games, well, at the time of the recording of this video. And one of them was a game that actually gave me the idea for this video. And okay, here we have actually quite a tricky position. White to move, and this position was suggested to me by a Reddit user. And white to move here, and it's quite tricky because let's try moves such as king c5. Now black can draw here with pawn to b6 check. If bishop takes b6, this we already know, king b7. Okay, note that we're on the other side of the board. We still have a wrong rook pawn, although we're on the a file, because now we have a black squared bishop, and the black squared bishop indeed does not control the queen square here, so this is the wrong rook pawn again. So king b7 secures the draw for black. He's in time to reach the corner. Funnily enough, although we're leaving the realms of the wrong rook pawn, this is also a draw. And that's because of the horrible placement of this bishop, which can't move. And when we try to approach with the king, it's going to be stalemate. And of course, this bishop can't move. And now we have the opposition is black. This is a draw by stalemate. So okay, we tried king c5. What if we try king to c4? Well, this runs into b5 check. Very unfortunate. We take with take en passant. It takes b6. We have the same draw as before. King b7. we reach the corner, positional draw. And again, if we take with the king b7, we're in time, we reach the corner. So it's clear that we have to be able to meet the push of the pawn with the pawn a6. So we can actually win here with king d4. And if black tries something similar like b6, we play a6. Then we simply win the pawn. Well, let's try b4 for instance. And now we have a similar situation like we had earlier in the video, where it was important for the king to be close. The bishop and the pawn are actually sheltering the king from reaching the corner. And now it's very important for the king to be here to stop black from reaching this square from where it can attack the pawn. So from here, black can't really do anything, and we're going to have, well, white to move. We're going to have a similar situation as before. We're going to reach the important b7 square, which was the g7 square earlier, but it's just mirrored across the board, so it's the same idea. And then we push the pawn, etc. And do queen. So yeah, king d4. So after that, yeah, pushing the b pawn no longer works because we push the a pawn. So if we try something like king c6, now actually we can win with bishop b6. It's important still that the king can't reach the corner. And okay, if it goes this way, then we simply walk up the board here, and we're going to pick up this pawn eventually. And then we're already on the b7 square, and we're going to be able to queen our pawn. And if the king goes the other way, now we're actually in time with our king, aren't we? Because we can play bishop a7 here. And in case of b6, we take with the king. Next we play king b7, and then we queen our pawn. And in case of b5, we play what? Correct, we play a6. Then we pick up the pawn, and we're going to have the same zugzwang as before. There only remains king here, but now simply king here. And yeah, we're going to be able to win from here. Oh yeah, this might not actually be the best win, but okay. Just trust me on this one, white is going to be winning here. So okay, let's see some other positions. This one is from the recent game Carlsen against Grishuk in the Norway chess tournament 2015, where well, Carlsen did quite poorly, but this is actually the final position against Alexander Grishuk. And it made me think a little bit about the wrong rook pawn. And Carlsen's last move was bishop f7 to g6. And well, it turns out that this king can't really go anywhere for black. Mainly because, well, if you try to exchange, then I don't really have to worry about even the opposition. I can even blow the opposition here. King e6 was better, but I can even allow this position because here the pawn has to move, and we capture it en passant, and we give mate. So let's say we keep the king in the corner instead, and after king e5 we go king g8. Well, white is simply going to walk his king to the bishop here and simply win it. Black has to sacrifice here. And now we have an interesting situation because we actually do have the wrong colored rook pawn. But here the presence of these extra pawns are actually hurting black. And these pawns can't move, so black must go to the corner with something like this. And now we have to be careful. King f8 is stalemate. So we actually play something like bishop f7. We have to be a little bit careful here. We have to be a little bit careful. So let's see if I actually remember things correctly. Because I want to reach the king to f8 and then play bishop g8. Or is this too risky? Or is this winning? So black's key defensive idea is to play g5. And if we don't take en passant, we're going to be left with a wrong rook pawn. Black can go back and forth to the corner. And it doesn't matter if we win this pawn or not, it's going to be a draw. So we have to take here. And now, are we in time for this pawn? Well, black must play king g7 here, otherwise we play king f6 and win. And yeah, we're in time here. We're going to win this pawn. And since we'll no longer have a wrong rook pawn, it's not an issue. If the pawn runs, then we just win it immediately. So a better defense is maybe to, well, actually it's not a better defense, so we have to run with the pawn. And we simply win it. And then come back and win easily. So let's go back to this position here. No, not this one. I apologize. We're looking at this one. So we can play bishop f7, and g5 doesn't work as we just saw. So king h7, and yeah, here is the important winning maneuver. We play bishop to g8. King is kind of in a stalemate position. He must move this pawn now, and whichever square he chooses, we either take it directly or en passant, like here. And then we're going to be able to give checkmate. So an important pattern there to break out of the seeming trap there with the wrong rook pawn. So yeah, the presence of the extra pawns there enabled us to get a win there. So once I saw the Carlsen example, I was thought of another example, and we're gonna enter this example slightly earlier in the game, in the end game. And I actually witnessed this game where Grandmaster David Howell was on the white side against International Master James Adair. I was playing in the British 4NCL League, and I was on the same team as Howell. So this was quite a nice ending. And here he sacrificed the exchange. Rook takes d4. And on the surface, this looks simple, but the thing that he had to keep in mind throughout this ending was indeed the wrong rook pawn, because he has the wrong colored rook pawn in case things go south. So let's see what happened. Black activated his rook, king c5, rook to d1, maximum distance for the jacks. White blocks the jacks. Black attacks a pawn, white has to defend it, another check. And now he comes over to pick up this pawn with check, so everything had to be precisely calculated. b6, and the main factor was always going to be if this was enough. Rook takes g4 check. The king supports the pawn. Rook g3. The bishop moves. Actually, it went to c4 here. Rook e3, trying to get at the passed pawn. And unfortunately for black, he's not in time. And of course, yeah, the thing that had to be calculated here is if we don't have this pawn, black would be able to play here. Well, he will be able to play g6 and just eliminate the remaining pawns. He will play rook b8, and at the bishop c8 or king coming, he will play g6 and eliminate the pawn. So the f pawn was quite important as well. But okay, rook b8, king comes. And now we have a very, very similar situation to what happened in the Carlsen-Grischuk game. And any attempt to play g5, we're going to take en passant and Unfortunately, we're going to have a g-pawn and not an h-pawn, and that would save the game. So here actually it's more simple because we have the extra pawn here. And what happened was very similar to the Carlsen game. We just had bishop g8, and yeah, once this pawn moves, we're going to take with the h-pawn actually, and then give mate. So yeah, something like this. Checkmate. So okay, maybe not as direct an example as the others, but just to illustrate that in the calculations you always have to account for what remains on the board. So it was always going to be clear that white would be able to sacrifice the rook for the pawn, and Howell had to make sure that he would have enough left on the king side once that happened, and indeed he managed to do so. So quite often we might end up in an endgame like this, and as we know, the wrong colored rook pawn is a draw. So quite often winning chances can arrive when there are extra pawns, like in this position. And here with white to move, it's very important not to just go away and grab some pawns here with bishop takes b6, because now it's an immediate draw. As you already know, we can't kick the king out of this corner without stalemating it. And once we take, well, if you don't take this pawn, it actually doesn't matter, it's a dead draw. So our only chance is some kind of zugzwang or mistake. And perhaps we can try to make something happen by playing here bishop to e3. And here black can actually go wrong. If he plays, say, king h1, or say king g1. Well, it's actually b8, I apologize. We don't take the pawn again because he goes to the corner, but we play king a6. And what happens now? He goes to the corner. Boom! It's stalemated, but it's a good stalemate because he does have an extra pawn, the presence of the extra pawn. And now he has to move it. And now our rook pawn is no longer a wrong rook pawn. It's 100% correct knight pawn. And that can be queened. And actually it's made in two here. So very important. Going back. That's the wrong move. After bishop e3, king b8. Lost my train of thought. Yeah. So after this, black has to play here, and here there's actually no way forward. We can't give the correct zugzwang here. King a6. Let's say here. We go here. Here. And here it's important. Again, this is another important position. We go here. If you go here, that's another trick. That's actually mate in 1 because b5 is the only move. And mate. So these two zugzwangs are quite important. This one with the king here, which is good for us. And the other one, where is it? Where are you, man? Yeah, right here, bishop f4. Again, the king is stuck in a bad situation, and the rook pawn becomes a knight pawn. Boom. Here we have a similar example. This is actually from the game Knight Too Short against Garry Kasparov. And here the presence of the extra pawns is going to be problematic for white. And let's see what happened in this game. Black started to systematically run the king. King d2, king e4, king c3, king e3, king c2, king e2. Now white can't allow black king to well, come from behind, so this is all more or less forced. Note that if white goes b5, we get the knight pawn, which is excellent for us. So after king d2, king a1, king c2, king a2, king c1, and king a1. If king a3, we play king b1, king a4, and king b2. And what happens here is that we've managed to come from behind, and now the king is not in the corner where it's supposed to be, and we can push the pawn towards promotion. So a better try is king to a1, but now we can play bishop b1, an important zugzwang, and the resignation is forced because now we have a knight pawn, and more importantly, white had an extra pawn, very important, because now it's not stalemate. After b4 we simply go out of the stalemate and we win this pawn easily and the game. A great example. So we already have had a lot of examples here, and well, perhaps the video is becoming quite too long, but I do want to leave you with one more example, which is kind of typical. Both sides know what they want to do. Black wants to get the king to the corner. So white must keep him out, and the win can be achieved if white can keep black out of this imaginary prison here, indicated by the black squares. So let's see an example here, bishop f4. So the idea is to win the pawn, but we have to keep the king away from the corner. So king g2, and here the well, it looks more logical to go towards the pawn, but king g4 is actually the correct move. If we go king e4, then king h3, king d5, and king to g4, bishop to h2, and from here it's fairly clear that we entered the cage that we drew up earlier, and if white goes for the pawn, we're going to reach the corner. So king g4 is actually the correct move. King f2, bishop c1. Okay, the king tries to come over, but notice we're still out of this cage that we had earlier with these squares here. So after king f4, king d1, bishop d3. It goes for our pawn, but the most important thing is to keep black out. King c4, king b6, king b5. Is he going to reach the corner? No, he's not, because we keep him out here. A nice maneuver. And now the king must go up the board. Oh, did I mess up? Hang on a minute. Yeah, king a5 is actually a better move. King a5, king c6, king a6. Now bishop a3. Yeah. I apologize. And now in case of king a5, we sort of come from behind here. King b5, bishop b6. He still hasn't penetrated our cage. He's standing on the border, but still hasn't been able to penetrate. And here we're able to keep him out. King c4, bishop e3, king b3, bishop c1, king c4, and now bishop e2, a lovely move, followed by king b5. A little bit of a soup song situation there, and once we take the pawn, the king is behind where it's not supposed to be, and we're going to be able to shield the pawn to promotion. A little bit of a complex example that, okay, it's hard to explain thoroughly, but just to give you an idea of the complexity and, well, more importantly, the possibilities of winning such endgames. You have to try to keep the king away from entering the corner. And, well, there are some more complex examples of very similar situations, but I'll sort of leave you with these ones. So we had a lot of examples, and I think this is a very important pattern for you to learn to recognize. And I believe it can save you many games, especially when you're sacrificing to just reach the position where you know, okay, you can't win. I just get my king to the corner. He has an extra bishop, an extra pawn, but it's not going to be enough. I'm going to win. So this was pattern recognition number 6. I do hope you liked it. Please leave comments, like, share, etc. if you want me to keep doing these. And hopefully I'll see you later, sooner rather than later. Bye bye.